Carver. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Beatty. Further discussion? All right, if you would, please answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Fisher.
Yay.
Alderman Phil.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Davis.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
All right, it is unanimous. Motion carries, and I will read the consented agenda items. First is consideration of the minutes of the April 17th, 2020 work session of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. Consideration of the minutes of the April 27th, 2020 special call meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. Then under Mayor's business, we have consideration of approving the resolution for the federal government to include municipalities of under 500,000 in the relief and provided due to the COVID-19 virus. Relief aid provided. We added to the consent agenda consideration of advertising for requests for quotes for property, vehicle, and equipment insurance services. Under Department of Business Airport, we have request approval to accept the 2020 FAA CARES Act airport grant for George M. Bryan Field in the amount of $69,000. Number two, we have consideration to enter into a lease agreement between the City of Starkville and Circle S Aviation to provide flight training and aircraft maintenance for 3 years located in the portion of the South Hangar on George M. Bryan Field. Under engineering, we have approval of the lowest and best quote from Kimpro Services in the amount of $19,852 to perform 2 treatments of herbicide spraying for the 2020 ditch spraying program. And then under utilities, we have request authorization to advertise for source of supply bids from the electrical and water divisions of Starkville Utilities with the intent of awarding the source of supply contracts for July the 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020 period. And number 2 is request authorization for a change order to Chancellor Electric to site construct the Southwest Substation Control House for the sum of $796,074.93, which will result in a total overall project savings of $515,438.79. And that concludes the consent agenda. Yes, sir, my pleasure. All right. First item we have is going to be announcements and comments, mayor's comments. Obviously, we are in an ongoing situation with the pandemic. I think we're going to be taking up elements that go with that as it relates to a resolution that we have. The latest numbers for Oktibbeha County and for Mississippi are, let's see, we have 330 cases confirmed in the state of Mississippi today, and Oktibbeha County is reporting 57 cases, which is up from 52 on Sunday. So just as a daily update that we get. And I don't have anything other than that for announcement purposes. Do we have any board members wishing to make any announcements? Alderman Carver, anything? Alderman Sistrunk, anything?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Little?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Walker?
No, Mayor.
Alderman Beatty?
No, Mayor. Second.
Vice Mayor Perkins?
No, ma'am, Mayor.
And Alderman Vaughn?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you all. All right, first item we have is a public hearing, and this is the first public hearing amending section 14.7.5 sub A of the Unified Development Code to extend the grace period for non-conforming signs for 1 year until May the 5th of 2022. Alderman Little, this was your request. Do you have anything you'd like to say about it, or we can just touch on it real briefly? It's up to you.
No, ma'am. You can just touch on it briefly if you'd like.
Okay, I'm happy to. Did I skip that? Good Lord, I did. How did I do that?
Good catch.
Okay. Thank you. Citizens' comments. Thank you very much, Alderman Carver. This whole thing is throwing me off. My apologies. Citizens' comments. For those who would like to make citizens' comments, now would be the time. You have 3 minutes to talk to us about anything in particular that you would like, concerns that you have in the community.
Good evening, Mayor Board. My name is Alvin Ward 7. Greeting to the board and greeting to the mayor, police chief, and fire chief.
Good evening, Mr. Turner.
And Dale. All right, it's getting to kind of clearly with the people with the mental illness, depression, and depression, that is, either on both illnesses, easy to get depressed, or man depressed. And Liam Smith, with someone that knows someone that can help them with the situation with that church that's on 3747 Highway 25 South. 3747 Highway 25 South. A new sign with the former name is Zion Cypress. The children also have concern, they have no problem with the mask, but then we have people that have allergies and stuff, and they was hoping that they could find a place that would have the mask, that they won't get too hot. They don't mind wearing with different allergies and stuff, the wrong mask, and they be hot. Flex Steel, we lost, the, planning we were talking about how they will pay the bills, but hopefully that some will happen in there. Have no problem, man, no problem with the curfew. Our children are concerned about how circuit clerk is ran now, how they're gonna pay the bills now. Just an update. With the gotta pick up remain the same. Just an update. We have one car we have on Highway 25 where they're doing the sidewalk. We have they're trying to finish the sidewalk, but we have people that will try to drive their cars on the sidewalk and drive cars on the grass, and that's just something that they want to bring to the kids. They're trying to get through with the sidewalk, but trying to get through with the sidewalk, someone be bold enough to try to drive a car on it. And that was just some concern.
Thanks, Mr. Turner. Anyone else want to make citizens' comments? Anyone else? All right, I will close it as citizen comments, and I'll go back to what I was incorrectly doing before. So we have a public hearing. This is the United Development Code to extend the grace period for the non-conforming signs 1 year until May the 5th, 2022. About 9 years or so ago, the board who was in office at that time established a moratorium, not a moratorium, an amortization of signs that are existing pole signs that would give them 10 years in which to take them down and turn them into conforming monument signs. That year will be up next year, but given the nature of the financial difficulties associated with the COVID-19, which obviously none of us anticipated, this is allowing those with the businesses with those pole signs a little bit of grace period extended to take those signs and turn them into from pole signs into monument signs. So that's the thrust of it in essence. So this is our first public hearing. We will have two public hearings. This is the first one. The second one will be at the next board meeting, at which point in time that would be subject to having that modification put into the UDC. So any conversation from the board before I open it as a public hearing? Alderman Carter.
I want to make sure every business owner in town knows exactly what this is entailing, and have letters been sent out to the business owners who are going to have to invest and spend that money to conform with the signs. We were
going to do that this summer because that gave them a year, but now that we're doing another year, we are going to wait yet again because there's no point in sending it out 2 years ahead of time, assuming this passes. If the board chooses not to go ahead and enact this, then obviously we would send them out this year to give them some time frame. We also have planned on contacting them by phone so that everybody has a heads up on it.
Yeah, I just want a business owner to understand that if your sign is not conforming, my best estimate is between $5,000 and $10,000 for costs that they're going to have to incur. An example that I think of is kind of like maybe across from Wendy's Animal Medical Center. It's low, I believe 10 foot might be our threshold on sign, or 8 foot, but, just to understand that if you have a sign up, an elevated sign that a previous board, deemed that it needs to be taken down. So there's gonna be, you know, several $1,000s, cost to each and every business affected. So they're not blindsided. It's been 10 years. I can't believe it snuck up that fast, but that will be coming up next year, and they may need to start putting some dollars back for that. So.
Yeah, and we will make a plan to make sure everybody gets called. I have one, and I was actually going to take it down this fall just because it's, you know, it's just a pole sign. It's not particularly attractive, but I'm not going to replace mine. And there's, you know, there's an option. They don't necessarily have to replace them, but if they do, it's going to be costly to do so, at least to that extent. So, Alderman Sistrunk, anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I would like to say that I see a sign being changed out at the corner of, I think, Douglas MacArthur and Highway 12. That may have been triggered by a change of ownership. There seems to be some branding that's changing there, but it already looks different, and in my opinion, better. So I think in the long term, this will be a great thing for the city, and I think the businesses who've not been setting aside the money, this gives them a little extra time to recover and be able to do that with that extra year.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Alderman Little?
Thank you for that summary, Mayor. I agree with Sandra on that this will give them a little bit extra time, anyone that was hit with a hardship, and also say that, you know, they've been given 9 years, and, you know, we could probably give another 5, and some would probably not just willingly jump out and do it. So, but I think it will give them a little extra time financially to prepare for that if they haven't already over the last 9 years. So they've got an additional 24 months from this point.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Walker?
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Alderman Beatty?
I like the extension of time, but I also think this movement for these lower profile signs is a good thing for city staff. We'll get the looks of time.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Mayor Perkins?
No comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Vaughn? All right, thank you. All right, I will open it as a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak about this matter, either pro or con, or just informationally speaking, now would be the opportunity. Anyone wishing to talk about this from a public hearing standpoint? All right, seeing none, I will close it as a public hearing and move to our next public hearing, which is public hearing and consideration of SE 20-03, a request for special exception to allow for a 42-unit townhouse development on Lynn Lane in a TN end zone with a parcel number 102100002.00. And Dr. Kim, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Let me do the presentation.
Okay.
This is a request by Henry Minor on behalf of William, Sean, and Dallas Richmond for special exception to allow for townhome development to be located on Lynn Lane in a TNN zone, which is a traditional neighborhood new zone. Andy Fune is the developer. The use chart requires a special exception for dwelling, townhouse, row house in a TNN zoning district. The property is about 5.3 acres. The proposal is to build a 42 townhomes with the gross density of 7.92 dwelling units per acre. The applicant has submitted the concept dwellings of the proposed buildings. More specifically, 6 4-plexes and 3 6-plexes have been proposed, and each unit will have 3 bedrooms. The project will require architectural review in accordance with the Section 3.10 of the Unified Development Code. The concept plan shows 158 parking spaces, which meets the requirements of 1.25 spaces per bedroom. A buffer is also shown on the north side of the property. The request was noticed in accordance with the Section 3.4.3.e of the Unified Development Code. Prior to the publication of the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report, the Planning Office has received 2 emails and 3 phone calls requesting information about the request. An email expressed some concerns with the project and requested 2 conditions if approved. First one was buffers toward the little run should be built, and the second one was no rental clause in the covenants should be prepared. Since the publication of the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report, the planning office received another email which expressed opposition to the request concerning first, proposed density, and second, traffic increase. And the letter statement which he presented to the staff at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in opposition was regarding the compatibility issues, especially on massing scale and density of the proposed development, and also requested was no rental provision. So staff reviewed the criteria for special exception review in this case and found 5.3 acres with the maximum density of 8 units per acre is allowed, which generates 42 units. Excessive will be provided from Lynn Lane. No environmental constraints were observed, and so does it fit with the surrounding area? Internally, the proposed plan meets all code requirements. Externally, the applicant proposes 25 feet setback from the Pleasant Acres subdivision to the north. However, it is recommended for the applicant to provide type C buffer. Type B buffer would be required to the east at the boundaries with the River One. So type C buffer requires a 20-foot width with a 6 to 8 foot fences and the canopy trees and shrubs. And type B buffer is the difference is only about the width. The type B buffer requires 10-foot width. So to the north, Pleasant Acres, the density is 2 units per acre, and to the east, the density is about half of the proposed development. So type C buffer would be required to the north, and type B buffer will be required to the east. Also, this project will provide a transitioning effect from the west commercial site to the neighboring residential development. Also, it is about the traffic. When it compares to the single-family house development, townhouse development produces lesser traffic impacts, about half. In this case, it will produce about 22 or 24 PM peak trips, whereas the single-family home would provide 43 to 45 dwelling units for the same 42 units. This is a trip assignments, as you can see from this the drawing. The impact on the road would be pretty minimal. So traffic issues are minimal in this case. It is not a commercial or industrial development, so it is estimated that these projects are not detrimental, injurious, or noxious or offensive to other properties in the neighborhood. Public services will be provided by the Starkville utilities and police fire, and this development will provide stormwater detention measures. The site plan shall be reviewed by the DRC, so the details will be provided later. There will be no foreseeable impacts on property values toward the neighbors. And the project is consistent with the 2016 comprehensive plan, which recommends to create range of housing opportunity and affordable choices. It will meet all required development standards through the review. And also there are additional standards which requires it's gotta be architecturally harmonious with the surrounding neighborhood, and the front facade shall be facing the public streets, and no more than 6 contiguous attached units will be required. Accessory dwelling will not be allowed, and the maximum of 3 bedrooms per unit is only allowed, and maximum density required for this TNN zone would be 8 units per acre. DRC previously reviewed this project and provided some of the detailed design issues, and after this approval, the DRC will further review and provide the permit for the final site plan. In the opinion of the planning department, the proposed use associated with the special exception request does meet the special exception criteria. At the April 14, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the commission voted 3-1 to recommend the approval of the request. Today, the suggested motion would be to move approval of the SCE 20-03 request for special exception to allow for a 42-unit townhouse development on Lin Lane in a TNN zone with the parcel number 102I-00-002.00. After reviewing the neighbors' concerns through the PMC meeting, staff recommends the following 2 conditions. First would be the provide type C buffers toward the Pleasant Acres and provide type B buffers toward the Little Run. Of course, the board can decide to add more requests or modify these conditions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kim. Is the applicant here? If you would identify yourself, since we can't see you with a mask, come on up to the podium, and do you have a presentation you'd like to make?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I control that with this or do I need to say next slide? Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Henry Miner. I'm a landscape architect with Kilmy Horn Associates, and with me tonight is the applicant and developer, Andy Forney, as well as our legal counsel, Gordon Flowers with Bruni. So as Dr. Kim did a great job explaining, this special exception is obviously for a townhouse use request. And we understand that this is the first special exception to come before the board since the Unified Development Code was adopted. And unlike some of the previous requests and with the old code, this is not a situation where we're having to obviously demonstrate, change in character or public need. The traditional neighborhood new zoning classification allows for townhouse use with a special exception, obviously, and with meeting the additional criteria. And so what I'd like to do is go through a series of slides here that is highlighting the conceptual site plan that we've developed. Obviously, as was previously discussed, the site plan will have to come before the DRC for final approval, but this site plan very much shows our intent of how we expect this property to be developed. Again, I'll go through each criteria and the exhibit that's before you. It will go back one, I'm sorry, just before that, the original. So this first exhibit talks about the criteria of site suitability. And so when we look at site suitability, what we're thinking about is, is the property, can the development that you're proposing, does it work with that site, both from the size, both from the existing conditions? And so the existing topography on this site falls from north to south, and it actually comes to a low point in the exact location where we have our proposed retention pond. And so that will be a pond that has a constant pool of water, a fountain. It will become an aesthetic amenity at the entrance, and it will also work towards meeting the stormwater requirements. So the lay of the land kind of tells us where we need to do that, and we're addressing that by putting the pond in the current low point. Additionally, once we were able to meet that target density mark of the 8 units per acre, just under that, we still have room for 22,000, a little over 22,000 square feet of common usable open space, which is roughly 10% of the site area. So when you look at it from a site suitability standpoint, we meet all the building setbacks. The site is definitely suitable for this type of development. So on the next slide, we talk about the traffic impact. And as Dr. Kim said, the trips that will be generated from this townhouse unit, this townhouse use, 42 units, is really very minimal. So when our traffic engineers looked at it, what we were able to project was that in the the AM peak hour, there would be 19 additional trips, and then in the PM peak hour, there would be 24 additional trips. And with the recommendations from the previous traffic study that we did on the Valentine development, which asked for recommended and was accepted that some retiming of the signals at Lynn Lane and South Montgomery, that intersection, this additional traffic will be able to be, accepted and addressed with those minor recommendations and modifications to the timing of the signal. On the next slide, what we get into is really one of the most significant criteria, which is the immediate neighborhood impact. And so in this site exhibit here, what I'd like to call your attention to is some of the site design decisions that we made, as well as I will go ahead and outline 3 conditions that we're going to self-impose. So when we look at the immediate neighborhood impact as it relates to the site design, one of the decisions that we made from the very beginning was to make sure that the orientation of the buildings and the green space would be such that the parking areas would really be screened from view, from the public view and from the adjoining neighbors. And so as you can see, the buildings there along Lynn Lane and where they're located around the perimeter, as well where we have the green space located, we've really done a great job of trying to screen and minimize any kind of visual impact of those parking areas, and also really trying to create kind of a park-like setting when you're coming right into this development, where you'll have green spaces, seating areas, benches, again, the aesthetic water feature there at the front door. So the 3 conditions that we would like to describe that we're going to self-impose, and this is after conversations, after the planning and zoning meeting and dialogue with the neighbors. The first condition that we'd like to self-impose relates to the size of some of the buildings. So as you'll see along the northern property line at the top, we have 3 6-plex buildings that are shown. There was concern about the massing and the scale of those buildings as they relate to the existing developments, Riddle Run and Masonville, as well as the future development to the west of the commercial development. And so what we're going to have as our first condition is we're going to limit the development to townhome buildings containing 4 contiguous units or less, with an 85-foot max width and an approximate 4,800 square foot footprint. So 4 plexes or less, that's all we're going to be able to allow ourselves to use and develop going forward with the site plan. The second condition relates to the buffers, as Dr. Kim was explaining. But we'd like to go ahead and clarify that on the Riddle Run side, we will be implementing a type B buffer, 10 feet wide, and have an 8-foot tall fence. We will also implement that same 8-foot tall fence along the northern property line as it adjoins to the Pleasant Acres.
Is that considered a Class C on Pleasant Acres, or is it?
The buffer along Pleasant Acres is type C because of the single family to multifamily, and then the density is less than half of what we're proposing. So that would be the second condition. The third condition really relates more to the construction sequencing. This is something that not necessarily has anything to do with site plan or use, but it was important to the neighbors that the sequence of construction would really be cause the least amount of impact to their quality of life. And so what we're going to agree to is the 3 buildings in the southeast corner, so the 2 that are fronting right there along Lynn Lane and the one that's immediately adjacent to Riddle Run, those will be the first 3 to be built. Additionally, we will agree to having that 8-foot fence built by the completion of that 3rd building, whichever the 3rd one ends up being of those 3, to make sure that the development and the construction can get in at that initial phase, be completed, and establish the landscaping, establish that buffer, so that they can continue on with their quality of life as the rest of the development unfolds. So those would be the 3 conditions that we would like to self-impose as it relates to the immediate neighborhood impact. So on the next slide, what we wanted to talk about and was mentioned before is just how this land use really actually creates a great transitional use. The uses there at the intersection of South Montgomery and Lynn Lane, you start there with single family, and as you work to your west, we have commercial zoning all the way at the far western end of this image. And so really the townhouse use is really a logical land use transition between single family and the duplexes of Riddle Run, and then the future commercial development that's going to happen to our west. both the scale and the density really relates and kind of creates that logical transition from low density all the way to the highest density of the commercial land use. The next slide and the next criteria we talk about, what we want to discuss is the consistency with the comprehensive plan. And so the comprehensive plan indicated that this property should be a traditional neighborhood new place type. And what that talked about, what the comp plan talked about is in regards to the traditional neighborhood new place type, was having buildings pulled close to the street, having on-street parking, having really well-designed streetscapes. All of those things are guiding forces in how we laid this out, and we really, wanted to kind of capture the spirit of the comp plan and what they were talking about, and as it showed and was portrayed, in this site plan. So this land use that we're proposing, we feel like without a doubt is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The next series of slides are really kind of focusing on the additional standards that relate specifically to a townhouse use. And so what we're looking at there is, the density that we're proposing. We're within the maximum allowed. We're proposing 7.9 units per acre with 8 units per acre maximum. And as you look at our, adjoining neighbors, the density is really similar, 7.9 units per acre, the same density in Masonville, 5 units per acre in the Riddle Run development. Additionally, on the next slide, we talk about how this development that we're proposing in the construction, the building, the size, the scale, the materials really relate to these adjacent neighborhoods. When you look at the footprint of the fourplex, it's approximately 55 by 85 feet in size, and the duplex just adjacent to it in the Riddle Run development is 60 by 80. So very similar footprint. The duplexes are 2-story. They're also 30 feet tall. The maximum allowable height for our townhomes will also be 30 feet tall. So really a comparable size structure that we're going to be proposing. Additionally, the materials that we're proposing, masonry with some hardy plank lat siding. These are the same materials that are used in the Riddle Run development as well as the Masonville development. So from a scale and materials and architectural style, we really feel like it is very much in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. On the next slide, we just wanted to kind of highlight some other design decisions that were made that really relate to these additional standards. One of which is making sure that buildings, the front of those buildings are fronting the public right-of-way, to where you've got a public sidewalk and you've got direct pedestrian access from that sidewalk to the very front of each townhouse building. That was something that was very important to us with how we laid this out. We addressed that. Additionally, you kind of see the dashed yellow lines. What that's highlighting is all the sidewalks and the extensive pedestrian network that's within this development that allows all the residents to be able to connect to these different common open spaces and really create a walkable feel and really, really improve the pedestrian network kind of in this specific area. So with that, I'd really like to close and just say, we feel like the site plan and these points that we brought up showcase how we have met the special exception criteria, all the additional standards, without a doubt, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Okay, we'll run down the line real quick and then I'll open it to the public hearing. Alderman Carver, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
All right, Alderman Sistrunk?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Little?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Walker?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Okay, Alderman Beatty?
Mayor, I guess because this residential construction, this didn't come under architectural review.
I believe it. Yeah,
It's gone through architectural review process.
It will be.
Subject to that as well as the DRC
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Mr. Perkins?
No, ma'am, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Vaughn? Okay. Well, Mr. Latimer?
Thank you, Mayor. Henry, I just want clarification on one point. I know Dr. Kim recommended 2 conditions and they were buffer related, and your second self-imposed condition was buffer related. Are you self-imposing the same thing recommended by Dr. Kim, or is there tension between y'all's 2 buffers?
There's no tension. I think the only addition to that is, so in the type C and type B buffer, it allows the fence that's required can be 6 to 8 feet. What we are saying is we are committing to an 8-foot fence. That was very important to the neighbors to make sure that there was a very substantial buffer there, and that additional height on the fence is what we're saying we're going to commit to.
So if the board were inclined to adopt Dr. Kim's 2 conditions and your 3 conditions, all of that works together.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I will take this opportunity to open it as a public hearing. I believe we have some folks who are wishing to speak to this. If you would, now would be the time. You are welcome to come in if there's, well, I was going to do in favor, but I think you're probably, I'm not sure what you are. So all those in favor can come up and talk about it.
I'm in favor.
All right, well, that's perfect then. If you would identify yourself and we'll take notes.
My name is George Berry. I live at 52 Riddle Run. And I thank all of you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Riddle Run residents regarding this conditional use. I understand that they have, the builder has agreed to 3 conditions that we ask. I think all of you have received an email from me with our concerns, and there are 4, and he has agreed to 3 of them. Just as a review, that the building will be a maximum of 4 units, maximum of 85 feet. Just for your information, Riddle Run is only 60 feet wide. So it's significantly bigger still. It's just the depth is the difference. The footprint of 100 square feet is basically the same. 8-foot fence with a 10-foot buffer, saving the amount of trees that he can within the buffer area. We agree to that. That the first 3 buildings will be the ones in the southeast corner and along Riddle Run, so that the fence will be there too. That will have buffer as we continue with the constructions, because we are right up against that particular. And as I said, they've agreed to that, and we appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you, sir.
But they did not agree to the 4. So I'd just like to address that if I could. The one condition is the owner-occupied condition. I and the other residents of Riddle Run paid a premium price to buy these condos because of its location, because of the quality of construction, and the fact that this neighborhood was an owner-occupied neighborhood. And I find it interesting that in his Valentine property, and in Masonville, and in River Run, we all have a covenant that says owner-occupied. In other words, this neighborhood is a desirable owner-occupied neighborhood, and it commands a higher value in terms of the property. A $280,000, 1,800 square foot, 3-bedroom, 3-car parking in an ideal location will be very enticing as an investment opportunity to rent to students. And I'll assure you that the 19 cars at peak time will go by the board very quickly. I understand that the city cannot, will not impose owner-occupied. I respect that. I also understand that an HOA group, an HOA can change a covenant once it's been imposed. I wish the developer would reconsider, work with us to develop covenants that would protect our property values, and I believe it would enhance his investment. We have no other issues with this program, and we will support his moving ahead with the development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I appreciate that. All right, anyone else wishing to speak to this? If you would, please.
My name is Tom Freeman. My wife and I live in Masonville. We have lived in Masonville for nearly 6 years now. We are very happy with our decision to move to Starkville and our choice of living in Masonville. like to thank George Berry and Riddle Run, who has led our efforts tonight. I think he has done an outstanding job in presenting the concerns that two of the neighborhoods have with the proposed development. In the interest of time, I will not review these again. Second, I would also like to thank Alderman Walker for meeting with 7 of the residents of Riddle Run in Masonsville on Thursday, April 23rd, and meeting with George and myself on Sunday, May 3rd. In these days and times, having a meeting with this many homeowners should show the Board of Aldermen the interest and the concerns that we have. Last night, in preparation for today's hearing, I sent a letter to all of the aldermen expressing our concerns with the development. As you know, there can be negotiations that can occur up to the day of the hearing. In this case, this has certainly happened. Like George mentioned before, Masonsville also has concerns about a development this size not having an owner-occupied restriction self-submitted by the developer or placed by the city. Without them, there will be some issues with property values if this development ends up being student housing. However, to move forward on this project, the Masonsville Homeowners Board recognizes there will be no owner-occupied conditions and will move on. The other 3 conditions that I mentioned in the letter yesterday have been satisfactorily resolved via self-submission by the developer. As such, I am glad to say that the Masonsville Homeowners Board recommends to the Board of Aldermen that they support the townhome development being proposed on Glen Lane. And lastly, I do want to thank the developer, Andy Frenay, for his willingness to work with the Riddle Run and Masonsville residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Freeman, we appreciate it. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close it as a public hearing, and we will go into discussion among the board. Having heard all of that, do I have a motion of any kind from which we can derive further discussion? Alderman Carver?
I am going to make a motion in favor. I guess speaking to what the city attorney said, Dr. Kim's motion talked about the place C against Pleasant Acres buffer and B against Riddle Run. What would be the most efficient motion to make sure we hear those 2 and then the other 2?
It would be the suggested motion just with tagging those conditions. So I'm putting my mask down just so I don't steam up my glasses. Move approval of SE 20-03, a request for special exception to allow a 42-unit townhouse development on Lynn Lane in a TNN zone with parcel number 1021-00-002.00 with the 2 conditions recommended by Dr. Kim and the 3 conditions self-imposed by the developer.
Move approval.
All right, so that was your motion. Do I have a second to that motion?
Mayor, may I?
Alderman Walker?
Alderman Carver, yeah, if I might,
Oh,
I would. Yes, Alderman Carver, I think that the conditions by Dr. Kim and the self-imposed are virtually the same with the exception of adding the 8-foot fence. I'm not sure that we need both and that they're duplicates. I asked for you to consider in the motion one additional condition that I think is also important as along the lines of the ones that have been self-imposed. I would like that the condition be that dedicated common areas other than the clubhouse area shall be used solely as passive space. I believe that is a concern of the citizens, and I think it's also the intent of the developer. And so adding that as a 4th condition would be something that, if you're so willing to be able to add that to the motion.
All right, Alderman Carver, is that a friendly amendment that you'd take?
It is, with some breaking up, I don't know.
What did you say?
But the
Okay,
developer,
it was passive space. Alderman Walker, would you state that again? You broke up just a little bit.
I will. Dedicated other than the clubhouse area shall be used solely as passive space.
Thank you.
Is that a friendly amendment you'll accept?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and now I need a second to that now amended motion.
Second.
So I have a second from Alderman Walker. Thank you. All right, further discussion. Anything, Alderman Carver?
I don't want to say anything. The comment I'm going to make actually probably doesn't pertain to the exact vote tonight, but it is relevant to the developer, and that is, with the stagnant economy, I appreciate you, trying this time. This is something that, locally, dollars are stagnant at best, and, at a volatile and perilous time. Thank you for trying. Thank you. From what I understand, speaking with the citizens and emails and the phone calls and texts I've gotten, I think they spoke to that you have been trying to accommodate, and make it work for everybody involved. I thought they were architecturally harmonious. Able to see some of what you've done in other areas in the state, and, that doesn't exactly pertain, but, if you do quality work, I think over time people will see that, and, we welcome you into this town, and anything we can do for you, let us know.
Alderman Sistrum?
I just want to thank the developer and the residents in that area for getting most of this worked out amongst themselves. That is a wonderful solution, and I appreciate everybody being willing to come to the table and hammer out something that works for everybody.
Thank you. Alderman Little?
I too had received several emails over the past several days, and I'd say kudos to the neighboring residents and their efforts in working to an amicable resolution of this matter. I didn't know how this was going to play out tonight, and I'm glad to see the developer Andy Fournay, as well as Henry Miner, work with those guys and try to come out with something everyone could live with. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Alderman Walker, since you the one who did a lot of work on this, comments from you?
Well, no, ma'am, I would just say I was there to listen. I appreciate the communication with the residents about this matter that spoke with me, and I appreciate the willingness of the developer and Henry to communicate and do what they can to try to make sure that we have a quality project here that is not detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood. So I appreciate and applaud those efforts. And I will say for the city staff, I have the sense that this is going to be approved tonight. I will say that prior to the silt fence going up and land being disturbed, it is very important as part of the code that the areas around within the setback that are going to have to be remain 50% of trees of a certain size. We just need to make sure that we're prepared to send people out prior to the trees cutting down and the bulldozers being on site, that we do our part to make sure that the plan is following the code. I know that we will, but I just want to make sure that we state that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Walker. We will certainly make sure that we are on top of that. So, Alderman Bailey.
No comment.
All right. Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. Very briefly, just want to say that I'm persuaded by the evidence and the testimony that I've heard tonight, and it clearly appears from the evidence that this project is not going to be apparently detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood. That area of South Montgomery, Sherwood Forest, all those areas located have a very rich traditional value. And given the comments from the gentleman from Ford and the evidence I've heard, I'm going to go ahead and support this tonight, because I'm always consistent in supporting and protecting neighborhood values and not diminishing neighborhood values. And I'm very familiar with this neighborhood of the South Montgomery, the Sherwood Forest, but it appears that all there's a meeting of the minds that this project is being supported. For all those reasons, I'm gonna go ahead and support it, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I yield.
Thank you. Alderman Vaughn?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, we've had discussion. We've got a motion and a second. If you would, please, without further discussion, answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Fisher.
Yay.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Dave.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Okay.
All right, it is unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you being here and wish you very good luck with your project. And your new neighbors, so if there's anything we can do, please let us know. All right, next item on the agenda, Alderman Carver, you had asked this to be removed from consent. This is the continuation of the 30-day declaration of an emergency so that we can be subject to getting the COVID-19 funds. This is a requirement that we put in that 30 days, or that we have that proclamation extending during the time when we can get COVID-19 funds. So that's the purpose of this. But any questions that you have about it?
Move approval.
All right, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Bates. Any discussion? Alderman Carver?
No, ma'am.
All right, Alderman Sistro?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Little?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Walker?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Beatty?
No.
Vice Chair Perkins?
No, ma'am.
Alderman Vaughn?
No, ma'am.
All right, if you would please answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carter.
Yay.
Alderman
Yay.
Yay.
Alderman Walker. Alderman Bailey.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
All right, that is unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is consideration. No, it's not. We put a C by that one. Never mind. All right, it's the last item under mayor's business, which was added by both me and Alderman Carver in two different forms, which is consideration of a fifth resolution of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for the control of contagious and infectious diseases and for the protection of public health, welfare, and related purposes. And I'm going to start this one off just by giving a little bit of a running history. We passed our first resolution on March the 20th, which is in relation to how we were going to handle the COVID-19 virus. And we passed a second resolution on April the 7th, again in response to the virus. And April the 21st, we did a third resolution in response to the virus. And then April 27th, we did the fourth resolution, and that one is the one that's currently in effect, and it is set to expire on May the 11th at 0800, which is when the governor's executive order is currently set to expire. We are taking this back up again today because yesterday the governor made some changes to his executive order and has yet addressed a couple of things that have changed a bit. One of them was related to restaurants, which had heretofore only been allowed to have curbside delivery. And so now we are at, or takeout, and now we are at drive-through, I'm sorry. And he added parks. Restaurants are now allowed to have in-house or outside on patio dining with conditions that he has outlined in his latest 1478 order. And then he opened state parks and left it to the municipalities or to the local entities about what they would do about their parks. And as a part of our fourth resolution, which has been our most contentious resolution at this point, one of the things I want to say, because social media kicks in and all kinds of things come up, but I want to be very clear with everybody that, you know, everybody up here and everybody on the phone, the entire board is doing what they think is right. Some of us are differing on what we consider the way to respond to this, but everybody is trying to do the very best they can for the entire community. So no matter what side you come down on this, we're all following what we think is the best thing for the community. And we have followed the governor's orders over these past weeks. We took the first step. He then closed businesses down except for essential businesses, and then he's begun opening them back up again. Most recently, and prior to yesterday's action, it was restaurants and personal care facilities were the ones that had remained closed. And yesterday, when he opened up those restaurants, then that puts us in a need to try to determine what we would do as it relates to restaurants, because he has required face coverings or masks for employees of those restaurants as they open, but we had required face masks or face coverings for employees who were serving any business of the public. So while a face mask makes sense as it relates to, or face mask or face covering makes sense as we go into public businesses, when you are at a restaurant that you are dining in, a face mask does not make much sense. So I think it was appropriate for us to make a determination that in a restaurant that a face covering or face mask was not necessary. And I thought in order to comply with the governor's order, that was an appropriate action for us to take. Hence the reason I was interested in bringing it forward. And I'll give Alderman Carver here in a minute all the time he likes to explain his thoughts about his resolution, both of which are in front of the board, by the way. But to address what the governor has been doing, he's been pretty much daily having a press briefing, and he discusses several things as he goes along. And yesterday he's been analogizing it to a dimmer switch, and so he turned the dimmer switch up a little more and opened up restaurants. He did it starting 8 o'clock on Thursday morning, but left his executive order of the 11th in place. And so that too expires at 0800 or 8 o'clock Monday morning on the 11th, which is when our resolution 4 also expires. We're set to expire. So Chris, you have made those you've created those two resolutions, and if you would like to highlight the differences between the two of them, since you drafted them.
Mayor, I'll be happy to. And board, let me start out with what we've said after each executive order, which is action by the board tonight is not legally mandated or compelled. So let me make that point. And just to quickly run through the ramifications of no action, if the board took no action tonight, face coverings for employees and customers would run until Monday at 8 a.m. pursuant to the board's fourth resolution. The curfew would run until 5 a.m. on Monday pursuant to the board's fourth resolution. Restaurants and bars could open for in-person dining as of Thursday per the governor's order, and it would just follow as a matter of law that if you go into a restaurant with your mask, you would take your mask off to eat. So that's how that would work. And then fourthly, city parks would remain closed until further action by the board. So that's if you did nothing. But the mayor has said that for purposes of clarity, she wanted to put forth a resolution like we've done every single time the governor has put forth an executive order that just clarifies the city's position with respect to the order. So Mayor Spruill's recommended resolution, and we'll read both of them tonight. These are just the high points. The ramifications of her resolution would be that restaurants would open on Thursday with restrictions per the governor's order, that city parks would stay closed until further board action, that employees and customers would wear coverings on their face until May 11th, with restaurant customers excluded from that, and the curfew would remain in effect until May 11th. So substantially the same result as doing nothing. It would just be a point of clarification and consistency. The third option is proposed by Alderman Carver, and there are two differences with his option, and only two differences with his option. Under Alderman Carver's option, the parks would reopen Thursday with restrictions, and face coverings would no longer apply to customers at any retail business as of 8 a.m. on Thursday. Those are the only differences.
Okay, all right. And I'll close here in just a second because I want to say why it was I felt like the face coverings were still important in the essential businesses, and that was because restaurants are not they're not mandatory. They are not essential in the sense of going inside and dining. We know that because we haven't been doing it for a while. They're pretty essential to me to go, for curbside and pickup, but they're not essential for dining in, however much I might miss it. But the places that were left, the grocery stores and Lowe's if you're trying to fix your house, or Riley's Auto Parts if you're trying to fix your car or something, you don't have any choice if you need to go into them. And social distancing is not necessarily available, even though you might try. I know I certainly have been in trying to pick up a bag of spinach and had somebody come in over my shoulder, and without me being able to keep that 6 feet of social distancing, which I think is important, and which is the primary thing that they tell us to do is keep that social distance. So that to me is the reason that not only do the patrons of these stores, but also the employees of the stores make a difference in how we are able to keep up with the social distancing aspect and being trying to stay away from one another and or be around people who may be asymptomatic but then are exposing others. So that was my rationale, just so you know what my thinking was about it, because I find that the grocery stores, for example, are places that people need to be and have to be because they've got to go get groceries. Even if they're compromised, they've got to go get groceries. So that was the rationale behind it, and that was all I wanted to do was share some of that, because I do think that even the governor today in his press conference said, be smart, social distance, wear masks when you're out in public. So, that still remains one of those things that people are saying. And for right now, while we're getting used to this, I think it's still one of those things that's important, even if come May the 11th, it expires. What I do also anticipate is that the governor, as he has in the past few weeks, he will have a press conference on either Thursday or Friday, and he will do something that impacts his deadline of, in this case, May the 11th at 0800, because I think he's probably going to either loosen it up or say it's going to stay the same. He's going to do something that's indicative of what's going to happen on Monday, because right now it expires. So I feel sure that we will be meeting yet again to see how we wish to respond to that. So having said that, I will give the floor to Alderman Carver to talk about what it is you wanted to do.
I think, first of all, even though the mayor and I probably disagree on just a few matters, I think at heart, obviously, we both want to protect the citizens. I'm going to lean more toward asking, I guess it's starting off with the city attorney, in your opinion, which resolution of the two most closely mirrors the governor's and the CDC recommendations for reopening?
I would have to say that your version does, because the governor's order allows parks to open, and you would be following that section of the governor's order.
Okay. I've got a lot of reading to do. It took just a page and a half, but I'm going to tell you my thoughts on my side of the resolution. I've learned to be a stats and a data guy, statistics and data guy, and that's just from a decade on the board and learned to take numbers. I wrote an article actually one of the hardest decisions I ever took. I voted on this board was our very first resolution for the fact that we didn't have any data. We're before the curve. And now after almost 2 months have passed, the numbers there. Right now in the state of Mississippi, I believe, could be off 100 or two, but 7,877 cases of a 2.976 million residents in the state of Mississippi, and so far infected. I believe the number is Matt to put it up. It's a we'll get it up in a second, but I believe it's 0.006% infection rate in the state of Mississippi. I did work 8 years in Homeland Security and Mississippi State University Extension Service. We did teach pandemic influenza cases. The first thing I learned from years ago, that's the number right there on the screen. I don't know if that's at the home, but the infection rate right now is 0.0026%. So one of the first things I did on onset was call friends in the medical field, friends in my family who are in the medical field, friends from previous statewide, FEMA, MEMA, those type individuals, and ask, is this a strain, zoonotic, transmissible between animals and humans? And this is, in my opinion, from listening to the medical field, it's who we need to be listening to. They weren't that concerned with the strain. What I've said the whole time, and I'll say it again and again and again, is we should follow governor's orders. When you start especially reopening the state, it's for a uniformity of the state. When you start reopening, I know alone in the Golden Triangle and include Louisville and that, we got people on a daily basis, myself, and may visit all 2 to 3 cities, possibly 4 in the local area. And it's not good, I guess, to not have a non-uniform approach in each and every city that you visit. The reason the reason we should listen to the governor and not really anybody on this board, and unless something's changed, I don't think anybody on this board, myself included, actually carries any medical certifications. I've asked Dr. Cameron Huxford if he wants to come up and have the floor if the board allows. He's our ICU director here at Ottawa County Hospital. I'm going to ask him in a second for some of his thoughts on the medical side. He's the COVID testing doctor for this region. The reason we should follow the medical advice is from the governor is not political. It doesn't matter if he's Republican or Democrat, but for the fact that he has daily briefings with top medical professionals, Dr. Dobbs and others. So he's getting current data. We do not rely on healthcare professionals here in Starkville at times. We just set policies we deem fit. My question is, who is the board consulting before policy is set? Is there any healthcare professional that someone on this board is choosing to say May 11th is a better open date than May the 7th? And the answer is no. If we did anything, we listened to our own local expert, Dr. Cameron Huxford. I will thank you personally for writing several articles. If you want to get up and speak, that's fine. If not, but some things I was going to quote some things you said in the paper, but if you want to get up and speak to personally what some numbers we've had in the hospital here, or what you think, if we're in a downward trend or an upward trend, or
Mr. Carver, so you're wanting him to come to address the board?
I would like to, if you'd like to.
Dr. Huxford, if you'd like to come forward, please, you can use the microphone.
Thank you. We haven't had any cases since last weekend in the hospital. There was 2 nursing home patients, they went home. We did test everyone at Rolling Hills today, which is the special needs nursing facility. We tested all the staff and all the residents, approximately 310 people, because they've had two staff that had tested positive. So we went in and tested everyone. We won't have that back. Some of that will be back tomorrow. Some won't be back for another day or so. We've not had anyone who would be considered healthy admitted to the hospital with who's had an adverse outcome to the coronavirus. We've had a total of 8 hospital admissions. 6 of those were nursing home patients. 3 of those died. There was a 4th death that was a non-nursing home person, but he had a lot of chronic medical conditions. So we've not had any healthy, what you would consider healthy people admitted to the hospital.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Huxley, you come back up and ask a couple of questions. I know.
Alderman Beatty, would you like the floor?
No, but I think
Go
I'll
right
Dr.
ahead.
Huxley too.
Go right ahead.
Is it true that, though, that people walk around with this stuff and is the term asymptomatic, meaning that they're system, they just don't get sick from it, but they are a carrier of this, that they can go in and out anywhere and not appear to be sick, but be carrying this stuff. I mean,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, and let me jump in because we have 2 employees who are infected and are asymptomatic, and we've had to put them on quarantine at a time when we obviously need them. So it is an issue. Yeah.
They're definitely asymptomatic carriers. They're mildly symptomatic people. The majority of the ones we've tested through the drive-through testing or through those positives have come back. I would say many of them are asymptomatic, or maybe they just had a cough or something very minor. Very few have had any significant symptoms. So it's kind of a tale of two groups of people.
Dr. Huxley, the reason we, generally speaking, the reason we wear these masks is not to protect ourselves from getting the virus, but to affect our transmitting it by somebody else if we cough or sneeze or something like that, correct?
Yeah, your mask protects me, my mask protects you. Yes, sir.
Before I let you go, let's go ahead and see if since you're here, let's see, okay, I'm gonna take your time and go to Alderman Sistrunk and down the line, see if anybody has any questions of Dr. Huxford. Alderman Sistrunk, any questions of Dr. Huxford?
I do. Dr. Huxford, I'm a breast cancer survivor. And when I received my diagnosis, I consulted with 3 different oncologists and got 3 different opinions about what my plan of treatment should be, even though there's a pretty standard treatment care regimen for someone like me who was diagnosed early on. Is it fair to say that medical opinions can vary, and that with this COVID-19 that medical opinions do vary, and there's not there is no there's no consensus of opinion about this. So your opinion as a medical professional is important, but there are other medical professionals who might have a different opinion?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Thank you.
Nothing else, Alderman Sistrunk?
That's
okay,
all.
All right, Alderman Little?
No, ma'am.
All right, Alderman Walker?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Huxford. First of all, thank you for what you've done for our community for testing patients. That is certainly a community effort that's going unnoticed. So thank you for that. The question I have is you've said, and what we've seen on the news is that the percentage of people that are not just getting sick from this, but the percentage of people that are dying from this are largely people that have underlying health conditions. And you said that it's not the healthy people. The question that I have is how many people are walking around that might think that they're healthy, but maybe they're not healthy, and they may be more prone to this disease than not. So what percentage of people that are walking around in Walmart every day that aren't healthy, that might fall into a category? When you think about a county like us, who has extremely high obesity rates, extremely high other underlying conditions. How does that factor into what you would be considering as healthy people? Thank you.
Yes, sir. I mean, there's obviously people who, whether they don't know, they don't care, various reasons they're unhealthy and they don't know it. Yeah, so we can't, other than to agree with you on that. We would hope that people, now part of this corona problem is that people have not been going to the doctor to take care of some of their chronic health conditions because they're afraid that they may contract the COVID virus. So that's a double-edged sword. There are those who don't know that they're sick yet, but there are those who are sick who aren't going to the doctor for fear of the virus.
Thank you. Alderman Baker, anything further?
Mayor, I just wanted to, I don't have any proposal for Dr. Huxford.
Okay, well, let me go down the line then. Vice Mayor Perkins, anything for Dr. Huxford? Any questions from you?
No, ma'am, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Vaughn, anything?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Dr. Huxford. Appreciate you being here. Okay. Alderman Carver, I need to give him back the floor.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, obviously we need to be unified in our response, let the emergency response system work the way it was designed to work for the sake of all of us. It will make our lives a lot easier. In the coming days, we're gonna have what, we need to coin the term personal responsibility. If you, you know each and every, you know your own health system, you know if you're immune, compromised, you know if you're in health, great health. The state can't go through and case by case check each and every person. If you feel as if you need to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't feel as if you need to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. It's going to come to that at some point. Whether or not this city closes, keeps restaurants closed for another 4 days or not, whether we keep the park closed for another 4 days or not, is not really going to affect the numbers of this virus. I think we should follow in suit with what the CDC, the governor, and Dr. Dobbs are recommending. Our restaurants are hurting. Whether we comply with the governor's whether we comply with the governor's recommendation this Thursday or impose more days of financial hurt on our local restaurants doesn't affect whether or not the virus will go in that 4-day period. I just ask each and every board member to please consider my resolution and follow suit with what the governor's recommending. Thank you.
All right, Alderman Carver, I'm a little confused. I thought that both of our resolutions virtually did the same thing for restaurants. They will open up and they can go in and do what the governor said do. So I wasn't trying to change up what the governor did as it relates to restaurants.
Okay.
I just want to be clear on that. So, all right. Okay, we have the two resolutions in front of us. I want to make sure that everybody has gotten a copy, because I believe everybody was sent a copy. Is there any board member who did not get one and hasn't had a chance to take a look?
Mayor, I had a question.
Alderman Little, certainly.
As it relates to parks and Mr. DeQuilla, that's the interim parks director, is it even possible to have those up and running by Thursday due to staffing issues and so forth? Could you speak to that?
Well, yes, Mr. DeQuilla can do that, but let me say now that he and I had spoken about this, and one of the things I'm concerned about is being able to get signage in place, for example, being able to get the nets back up, being able to get the goals up, having the parks prepped, and having everyone to have an opportunity to understand that we are not going to be staffed like we normally would. So I have asked Mr. Latimer and Mr. DeQuilla to confer on how our signage might say, this is going to be an at your own risk situation. The restrooms will not be opened. We will not be having staff who will be sanitizing playground equipment, for example, because part of our major cost-cutting efforts was to cut our parks, because they are the area that we can, at the very least, curb in what we do. We're not going to open the pool this summer. So those were the ways that we were cutting some of our costs associated with our financial hardship from the COVID-19. So I am trying to get, I think Mr. DeQuilla, and I'll give him just the floor here in just a second. Mr. DeQuilla, I think, sent out a request to one of our sign companies in town to see how long it would take to get some signs so that we could then get them ready for opening the parks if we were to do so. I was targeting the end of next week if we were able to do so, because I think that would give us time to make sure that everything is in place We want to coordinate with the police department so that they're aware of what we're doing, and we want to make sure we get it out on social media and get it out on the website as to exactly how we're going to approach this. So I was thinking that the end of next week would be a target time frame, and it's for those reasons.
Good. Thank you,
So,
Mayor.
Mr. DeQuilla? Sure, I'll let Mr. DeQuilla, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay. Would you like to add anything to what I said, or clarify anything I might have said, or correct me if I said something wrong?
No, I was actually on the phone with the sign company this afternoon. They're working on the proofs. I have not received them yet, so I'm guessing that we'll get. He said it'd either be late today or early tomorrow morning. Once we get the proofs, obviously I'd like you and Chris to take a look at those, make sure we're comfortable with the language. He said that he would turn us around as quickly as possible, but I think it would be, either middle day, late day, Thursday or Friday, possibly into work before we saw those signs and we're able to get them placed. As to staffing, we had 23 full-time, part-time employees with the furloughs and not working people. We currently have 7 full-time staff. We have 4 in maintenance. We're taking one of our administrative staff and putting them in with grass cutting and maintenance as well. Our biggest concern, and Mayor, you conveyed it, is we will have really no sanitary capabilities to go in and do anything. Obviously, we would like to keep the restrooms closed because we would not have the staffing to keep those up. We would run into some of the same issues with trash collection. We could hit those during the week. Weekends would be a problem. The folks that we do have on board are only working 32 hours a week. So there are some things that we would definitely want to talk about and get consensus with everybody on how we would handle certain situations, because even if we have everything open, the ability for us to maintain it, keep it sanitized, and those types of things are severely limited.
Thank you, Mr. DeQuilla. Mr. Ladler.
Mr. DeQuilla, you called me today and expressed a concern about the Travis Outlaw Center opening, both from a cleanliness standpoint, sanitation standpoint, and staffing standpoint. Can you give the board the benefits of your thoughts on that?
Yes, my question was really based on the fact that it's saying a building can have 10 people, keeping in mind that we would either have 1 or 2 of our administrative staff having to handle opening and handling the desk and keeping counts and that type of thing. So we might have 1 person up front, 1 other person in the building. With a count of 10, we're going to be limited to only allowing 7, 8, 9 people in the building at a time. And again, we'd be in the same position if we had people going up and down the stairs to go to the walk-in track or using restrooms or those types of things. We would not be able to sanitize on an individual basis following people around. We would have to do it at the end of the day or the beginning of another day. And we would want to talk about the hours of operation. I think we're set from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I think we would like to have some input on what those actual operational hours would be if we're going to try to operate the indoor facility with limited staff. In order to do outside and inside at the same time is definitely going to stretch the 7 people we have pretty thin.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Our farm already working 32 hours. Why they not working 40 hours like they're looking for?
Our staff.
Mr. DeQuilla?
Yes, our staff was put on 20% reductions for the people that we have left. They're on 32-hour work weeks. That was part of the cost saving measure.
We'll have to visit that because I'm not remembering. We'll talk about that. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. So okay, all right. I need to go down the line. Let me give someone else some conversation opportunity. Who was Alderman Walker? Anything from you?
Mayor, I agree with Alderman Carver in the sense that I think it's certainly, if the governor is going to be opening up the parks, I think we need to be looking at how to do that. I do think that there's some real financial, along with health concerns, but the financial concerns with so many people being on furlough, I see it just being almost impossible to do that in a prudent way by this Thursday. Perhaps that could be something that could be opened up again by, next week, maybe even Monday when the thing expires, or maybe later in the week. But I think it's very important that we roll this out right. And while I would be inclined to try to do it on Thursday, I think with the cost saving measures that we put in to try to abate for this, I think it almost makes it very unlikely to be able to do that in a meaningful way for this Thursday. So with that, I think it's not about trying to disregard what the governor and from the health perspective. I think it's a matter of making sure that we're ready to open up the parks in a way where we can guarantee as best we can what the citizens or can expect and what they're going to know what they get when they're in the park. I yield.
All right, thank you. Alderman Beatty.
Hey, I just wanted to share some statistics, just a few statistics from the Mississippi Business Journal, which is one of the states, the statewide newspapers of Mississippi, just to give you some kind of context or on where we've been in the last 45 days. On March 16th, we had 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the state of Mississippi. All of them were around the Hattiesburg, Forest County area. This morning, 45 days later, we had 8,207 cases in the state of Mississippi, with 342 deaths. In the last 2 weeks leading up to the week that we're in now, from April 20 through 26, there were 1,637 new cases in Mississippi, an average of 233 new cases per day. From April 27th to May 3rd time frame, there were 1,639 new cases, 234 new cases per day. May 4th to the 10th, which we're in that time now, we're tracking to 300 plus new cases per day in the state of Mississippi. So this stuff is serious, and it's a very contagious disease, and and from yesterday to today, we had 330 new cases in the state of Mississippi today, according to this newspaper. But I would make a recommendation or make a motion to approve the proposal that's set forth by Mayor Sproul, the fifth resolution of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen, which leaves in place the requirement to have face masks in businesses for customers as well as employees, that parks remain closed until we see, after the governor's opened the state parks, how that's going to work out with the state parks. And number 3, that we retain or keep our curfew on.
Okay.
And all of the other elements that were put forth by the governor.
Okay. All right. I have a motion from Alderman Beatty. Do I have a second?
Mayor?
I have a second.
Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have a second yet, Mayor?
Alderman Vaughn gave me a second.
Well, very good. And Alderman Beatty made a motion, and Alderman Vaughn second to approve yours as worded, right, Mayor?
That's correct, Vice Mayor.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay, and I'm in support of that, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was going to come to you if you had any comments.
Yeah, let me make a few things, Mayor. I'm in support of your recommendation. Thank you for that, Mayor. And there's been some discussion about the parks, and I like your version, Mayor, because what the governor did and included in his executive order is very important, is that as it relates to the parks, he left that to the sole discretion of the local governing body. And not only that, Mayor, he has an effective date of 8 a.m. this coming Thursday, May 7, 2020, and his Safer at Home executive order expires on this coming Monday, as you earlier said, at 8 o'clock on May 11, 2020. So this is the best approach to take, because it is reasonably foreseeable that we will be back in a special session either Monday or Tuesday to take whatever action that is necessary and proper, pursuant to whatever he may take as executive action this coming Thursday or Friday to take effect, on that day or soon thereafter. So, and I want to say, Mayor, before we get any signages actually approve and off the press from the printer. Let's just wait until at least Monday before that order is finalized, because the governor may come back and modify this. So, but as for tonight, this is the only action. As your resolution is exactly printed for us to take on this matter tonight, in my opinion. I yield, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Vaughn, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
My concern is not about me, it's more concern, but like all the fish from said, she is a council patient. You probably got a lot of council patients that you don't know. You got a lot of people that ill. And my concern is about the people in the front, how we know the people that are in the front of these guys here, what kind of sickness do they have? And I just feel like if they got to come man and say that we should be concerned about them. My concern is about the safety and health and welfare of this whole community city problem. I go to the doctor on a regular basis, and I got the illness too, but I go to the doctor regularly. And I just think it's best interest for this board to make the decision, leave the order just like it is.
Okay, all right, thank you, Alderman Vaughn. Anything further? Alderman Page?
There's not a person on this board that doesn't want to open our economy back up as quickly as we possibly can, and want to see businesses do well, people that invest money in business, and so we're very sensitive to that. I think though that first and foremost, the safety, the health and safety of our citizens comes first. And I don't think there's particularly, I don't say there's not a conflict right now. We're having to cut back on people's ability to access businesses and do normal business and commerce because of this, but the health and safety of our citizens comes first. I heard Dr. Hubbard say a while ago that the mask that we wear protects us from, getting somebody else sick. I think that we owe that to employees when we go in the store, to have these on, just like they're going to have the guy behind the meat counter in the grocery store, or the person in the clothing store that the clerk is going to have their mask on. It's appropriate, it's the right thing to do. We're all in this thing together to try to keep it as best we can, keep each other from getting each other, making each other sick from this stuff. If somebody's carrying it, and there are people that carry it that are healthy, have no symptoms, and so it's one more thing we can do. This is not painful. This doesn't hurt anyone to put one of these things on when you go into business and take it off when you walk out the front door. It's something we all can do until we know it's time for us to take them off and start to loosen up and go back to more of a sense of normalcy in our business and our commerce. But I think it's the right thing to do, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Vaughn?
And another thing, my sister had COVID-19. My niece had COVID-19. We live in Michigan. Both of them had it. My sister stayed in the hospital 5 days. So, it's very hurtful for somebody to do.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a motion and a second. Alderman Carver, I see your hand.
I mean, in all honesty, we're just talking about opening the parks. Y'all want to leave the traffic light law, sportsplex closed till Monday and keep all bathrooms, basically all indoor facilities closed. At least we get the parks back open. Somebody can get out there and social distance the correct way, what the governor and the State Department of Health is recommending to do. So I'm going to disagree with y'all on that.
I think the doctor wants to weigh in on, Dr. Oates wants to weigh in on what you're saying.
It's not appropriate at this point in time.
I would disagree with y'all in saying that no harm is done between now and Monday. I think we could go by, and myself personally, in a matter of an hour or two, to get the signs down for the outdoor use activities and the 20 or less as long as they're socially distanced. Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to do a little voice vote. Anybody else want to weigh in before we do a vote?
Mayor, I'd like to say something, please.
Alderman Little.
Yeah, I agree with Alderman Carver in that I would like to get the parks open sooner rather than later. I understand that Thursday's not realistic, but I think that's something we need to be working hard toward to get folks an avenue to go play soccer and hit the baseball if they want to, run around out there at the parks or use the walking trail. But we really need to open these up sooner rather than later. As to the mask, I've seen the flack that you've called and several others have called over the last week over that. I think we're really late in the game personally to, 6-7 weeks into it to start that requirement. I believe, like Alderman Carver, that we should follow the governor's lead And to do that, we actually don't even have to make a resolution or any motions tonight, nor do we have to have another special call on Monday. We can just follow the governor's lead. And I believe that's something that we should do. And I'm going to vote against that measure, but it sounds like the vote's already in.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Little. I appreciate it. All right. Anyone else? Any further discussion?
I'd like to speak.
Alderman Page.
I think this is extraordinary circumstance, extraordinary time we're in. We got the chief of staff of our hospital in this room. We need to hear from him. I think, Mayor, it may be out of order, but this meeting is, right now, we're trying to get the best information we can get to make the best decision we can make. I'd like to hear what Dr. Huxford said, the comment he was going to make about, I don't know, would it be, can we do that? Of course we can.
Dr. Huxford,
Yeah.
Do you have something else you'd like to say?
Don't do it.
Come forward so we hear you on the microphone, please.
I was just going to make a point to what you said. And I've written about this and said it. Whether you take this off tomorrow, Monday, or a month from now, or whatever, it's going to be here for a long, long time. And you're right, it doesn't hurt, but I don't know how long you're going to make people wear it, because if the research is accurate, it may be 2 years before everyone who needs to be exposed is exposed. So I just want to make it clear that this isn't the discussion doesn't go away a month from now or tomorrow or next week. And the other point is, opening the park or wherever, I think it's important to know that if you're not well, if you've had cancer, if you have diabetes that's uncontrolled, you don't have to go to all these stores. I mean, we should protect each other, yes, but if you are in the population that you're at risk, you should try and stay at home as best you can. We should quarantine the sick or the unhealthy and let the normal people move about. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I believe it's time. Mr. Latimer is going to read the resolution. Is that correct?
Just the sections, the action sections of the resolution.
Is this going to start on like page 4?
Yes, sir. The prefatory paragraphs remain the same. We only changed 3 things between the 4th resolution and this resolution in the prefatory paragraphs. 1, we just referenced the most recent executive order, 1478. And 2, we updated the data as to Mississippi and Oktibbeha County today with totals of cases and deaths. Now the resolution starts on page 4. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville that the city hereby adopts the following emergency measures that shall take effect immediately and remain in effect until rescinded by the governmental authority of the City of Starkville, unless a different effective date and date for continuing effectiveness is stated in such measures: to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the community from the spread of a contagious or infectious disease, and to eliminate or limit injuries or deaths that may occur in the absence of such measures. Section 1. The City of Starkville hereby adopts the findings and regulations set forth in Executive Order 1478, Section 1A, relating to in-house, indoor, or outdoor dining at restaurants and bars. Those activities shall be allowed starting on May 7th, 2020 at 8 a.m., subject to the restrictions and limitations contained in Executive Order 1478. Section 2. The City of Starkville's parks shall remain closed until further action of the Board of Aldermen. Section 3. All businesses, agencies, and units of government located within the City of Starkville shall continue to take all reasonable measures to ensure that such businesses comply with the CDC and the Mississippi Department of Health recommendations and guidance, and shall implement appropriate safeguards to prevent the spread of infectious disease, including but not limited to mandating social distancing, sending home sick employees and actively encouraging sick employees to stay home, separating and sending home employees who appear to have respiratory illness symptoms, emphasizing work-from-home policies where possible, mandating respiratory etiquette and proper hand hygiene, maintaining clean and sanitary workplaces, cautioning employees regarding travel, and taking all such additional measures to prohibit and/or reduce the spread of infectious disease and especially COVID-19. Section 4. Retail businesses open to the public shall continue to require their employees and customers over the age of 6 years old to wear face coverings through 8 a.m. on May 11, 2020, to align with the time frame of the Governor's Safer at Home Executive Order 1477. Employees and customers shall properly wear face coverings, ensuring coverage over the mouth and nose. Management must provide adequate supervision, including door monitors, to ensure that employees and customers entering the store comply with face coverings and to prohibit entrance to those not wearing face coverings. Customers dining in-house at restaurants and bars are excluded from being required to wear face coverings, but shall adhere to all of the restrictions and limitations contained in Executive Order 1478, Section 1A. Employees at restaurants and bars shall wear face coverings consistent with Executive Order 1478, Section 1A6. Section 5. A general curfew remains in effect in the city of Starkville from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. except for essential travel or essential activities as those terms are defined in the Governor's Executive Order 1477. This curfew runs through 5 a.m. on May 11, 2020 to align with the time frame of the Governor's Executive Order 1477. If the Governor extends the time frame of Executive Order 1477, this curfew shall also extend to be consistent with it. This curfew may also be amended at any time by motion and order of the governing authorities of the City of Starkville. Section 6. The city may issue such other orders as are necessary for the protection of life and liberty. And finally, Section 7. The penalties for violation of this adopted resolution shall be the same as those listed in the ordinance amending Chapter 1, Code of Ordinances of the City of Starkville, Mississippi, General Provisions, which the City of Starkville adopted on or about March 20th, 2020.
All right, thank you, Mr. Latimer. All right, I believe we have discussed, and so at this point in time, if you would, City Clerk, answer yea or nay as City Clerk.
I'll ask a general question that it slipped by me during debate. As far as pertaining to county courthouses and county employees, are they required to wear face covering and masks inside the buildings and county offices?
I believe that they are a separate governmental section, and as such, they are autonomous to us and can do what they please. They are elected officials also. I had several people get in touch with me complaining about the tax assessor's office. Alan Morgan's people were not wearing any masking at all, and so yes, and Chris validated that for me. So
they're highly encouraged to do it, but not ultimately required.
Even though they're within the city limits, they don't have to wear masks in the buildings.
They're a government agency, just like we are. They're essential function, essential business, and so you can't impose restrictions that they don't want to be imposed.
Okay, thank you.
What about other agencies like the park back state park agriculture or the health department? Health department should be wearing, but would they be subject to just the job? They would not be subject to municipal our requirement process.
If they're a state agency, I think they're going to fall under the governor's orders, Alderman Beatty.
okay, if you would answer yea or nay as the City Clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Nay.
Alderman Fisher.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Nay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Davis.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
All right, thank you. By vote of 5-2, resolution 5 is adopted. And if we would, Mr. Clements, if you would put that up on our website as soon as possible, please. Yes, ma'am. All right, thank you. For reference immediately, and we'll get it signed tomorrow and just put it up with the signature. All right, the only remaining item we have, I believe, is the claims docket. So do I have a motion to approve the claims docket?
So moved.
I have a motion from Alderman Carver to approve the claims docket. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Beatty. Discussion. Alderman Carver. Alderman Sistrunk.
Okay. No
So that was
discussion.
a discussion. We'll get the vote here in just a sec.
No discussion, and I'm going to be a yay when the time comes for a vote.
Okay, all right. Alderman Little.
Yay.
No, we're still working on a discussion. I'm just trying to see if anybody's got a discussion.
No, this is claims docket. No, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much. I'm sorry to be confusing. Alderman Walker?
No, ma'am.
All right, Alderman Beatty? Vice Mayor?
No discussion, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Vaughn? All right, thank you. Now, if you would answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Fisher.
Yay.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Beatty.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Nay.
Alderman Vaughn.
All right, my vote is 5-2, motion carries. And that carries us through the remainder of our agenda. If y'all would give me just a moment, let me read the language for the work session. We will have, in accordance with the notice required under Mississippi Code 2541-13, Board will be having a work session on 15th of May, 2020 at 10 a.m. Meeting will be held at City Hall, the second floor conference room at 110 West Main Street. Public and media are invited to attend. Notice should be provided of the work session within 1 hour of this meeting by posting such notice at City Hall, and it should be made a part of the minutes of the board meeting. The work session will be open and public meeting of the city of Starkville. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry, recess. I have a motion to recess from Alderman Carver, second from Alderman Vaughn. Discussion? All right, if you would answer yea or nay, does the city clerk call your name?
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Fisher.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Beatty.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
Thank you all, folks. We are in recess. I appreciate your willingness to work with us through all of the difficulties. So y'all have a great evening, and we will talk soon.